Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and we have a crazy story about a Florida lady who dressed up as an ICE agent and tried to arrest her ex-boyfriend's new wife. And we'll get into that and all kinds of other political and cultural stories today.
Yes. So should I do the Spanish?
Yeah, let's do 50. How many minutes you got in Spanish today? 15 minutes?
I don't know. There's not that many stories, so we'll see how long it takes.
Oh, okay. Give me 1 second to format the memory card.
Buenas noches a todos. ¿Cómo están? Voy a esperar a ver si se une más gente, pero si no, pues empiezo y ya.
You're late, not yet.
Voy a seguir hablando. ¿Cómo les va el día de hoy? Que espero que los que sigan de vacaciones, pues estén disfrutando sus vacaciones y los que no, pues ya entrar al trajín otra vez. Y como mencioné en inglés, no hay muchas historias de qué hablar el día de hoy porque pues todo es del Papa Francisco, pero ya hablé sobre eso el día de ayer. Entonces hablemos rápidamente sobre... Al parecer, ahora todos están muy preocupados porque Claudia Sheinbaum salió el día de hoy en la mañanera con la cara más hinchada de lo normal, pero me ayuda a hablar sobre algo que pues siento que es importante que más gente sepa, porque siento que no suficientes personas saben, y eso es sobre el Botox y los efectos y estas nuevas tendencias que hay, en especial entre niñas o personas más jóvenes que se empiezan a inyectar como prevención, pero terminan pues básicamente arruinando sus caras y terminan peor de lo que estaban antes de todas maneras. Entonces, en el caso de Claudia Sheinbaum, pues si es conveniente para ella o no, pues ya por lo menos está un poco más en edad, pero hay muchas personas que también andan diciendo que pues cómo puede ser que siempre dicen que no hay presupuesto para medicinas para niños con cáncer, no hay presupuesto para mejorar el sistema de salud en México, pero ahora sí hay presupuesto para andar inyectando a la señora presidente. Y hay muchísimos videos por todos lados. Este es un ejemplo de la comparación y de pues el mismísimo Andrés Manuel López Obrador quejándose del hecho de que todo el gastadero que se hacía alrededor de todas estas personas que se la pasaban inyectándose y que solo les importaba la estética, y ahora pues la mismísima sucesora, digámoslo así, del presidente Andrés Manuel López Obrador parece ser una de esas personas. Y pues realmente... What?
You're having interference.
Oh. From where?
The article. You're playing it.
Oh. Perdón. Sí se escuchan, pensé que no se escuchaba. Lo vuelvo a decir. Que Andrés Manuel López Obrador salió a decir hace bastante tiempo que cómo era posible que se gastara pues tanto dinero en que todas estas políticas que se iban a hacer cirugías o poner botox o fillers o etcétera, y que ese gasto ya se iba a acabar. Pero al parecer ahora su sucesora anda en lo mismo. Y mucha gente lo notó porque salió pues con toda la cara hinchada durante la mañanera, y en su puesto como presidente de México pues no puede saltarse un día, en especial el día después de que, por ejemplo, fallece el Papa Francisco, y hay varias otras cosas de las que tenía que hablar, pero en lo que más se fijaron las personas fue su cara. Y sí, son efectos secundarios de lo que hace el Botox, porque el Botox no es este milagro que muchas quieren creer y muchos quieren creer que es, y tampoco como lo venden siempre. Y es más peligroso de lo que muchas personas que nada más van y se lo hacen porque creen que les va a ayudar o que va a hacer que se sientan más seguros con sí mismos o seguras con sí mismas, realmente termina causando más problemas de los que arregla, en especial si se empiezan a poner todas estas cosas, no solo eso, pero también los fillers, o pues para rellenar, así le dicen en inglés, ciertas imperfecciones. Todo esto tiene consecuencias y trae consecuencias a la larga. Por si no sabías lo que es el Botox siquiera, el Botox viene de una toxina que es la toxina responsable por el botulismo. Si no saben qué es el botulismo, es una enfermedad muy grave en donde básicamente una bacteria termina paralizando sectores de tu cuerpo y eventualmente todo el cuerpo, y puede causar obviamente paros cardíacos, paros de respiración, y es muy peligroso, y por algo se han hecho varias cosas para evitar que la toxina se propague. Muchas veces pasa cuando, por ejemplo, con productos fermentados o productos enlatados que no están bien sellados y pueden entrar este tipo de toxinas. Por eso hay mucho más control hoy en día sobre cosas enlatadas, también vinos, otras varias cosas que se fermentan. Pero voy a leer rápidamente. El Botox, conocido también como toxina botulínica, es uno de los tratamientos estéticos más médicos. Su uso cosmético se ha extendido debido a su capacidad para reducir arrugas y línea de expresión, y esto es porque congela completamente la cara porque la toxina pues está haciendo efecto. Obviamente es una toxina más controlada cuando se hace en lugares de cosméticos o dermatológicos médicos, pero de todas maneras existen los riesgos de inyectarse una toxina nada más para verse mejor. Y lo que más me molesta o lo que más me preocupa es que más y más mujeres o personas jóvenes están empezando a inyectarse Botox de forma preventiva porque es algo que ha sido anunciado para, pues obviamente, tener más clientes, pero donde realmente no se les dice los riesgos, lo que pasa, lo que podría pasar también por estarse inyectando una toxina, pero en especial lo que va a terminar siendo el resto de su vida, no solo teniendo que volver a ponerse y tener que andarse siempre poniendo Botox, pero que en estudios recientemente, por ejemplo, en resonancias magnéticas, ha aparecido que muchas de estas cosas que la gente se inyecta, que creen o que les dicen que eventualmente desaparece o que el cuerpo lo vuelve a absorber, no es cierto. Y en muchos casos, en especial personas que se llevan inyectando 6, 7 años o muchos años, en resonancias magnéticas últimamente ha aparecido que básicamente tienen una máscara abajo de la piel donde todavía reside cada inyección que se han puesto, básicamente porque no son compuestos químicos de los cuales el cuerpo nada más se deshace, y terminan también, por ejemplo, con los fillers, o es ácido hialurónico normalmente lo que se inyecta de forma cosmética para arreglar ciertas imperfecciones o para deshacerse de las arrugas, que es de lo que la gran mayoría de las personas están súper preocupadas, que en realidad es normal, y poder mover la cara de forma normal también es importante, cosa que le afecta a muchas actrices también, que terminan no pudiendo hacer expresiones faciales y todas terminan viéndose como inteligencia artificial, y también terminan sin poder actuar o hacer su trabajo bien. Y también terminan viéndose todas iguales porque las inyectan en todos lados. Lo que pasa, y por lo que vemos a varias celebridades bastante hinchadas, por así decirlo, como nuestra propia Claudia Sheinbaum, es que de tantas inyecciones que se llevan poniendo y que les dicen que se disuelven, pero no se disuelven, pues se va rellenando y rellenando la cara y termina viéndose hinchada porque realmente están hinchadas de tantas cosas que se están metiendo. Y esto es básicamente una advertencia a las jóvenes, o a si tienen mujeres en su vida que se empiezan a quejar sobre eso o empiezan a pensar que sería buena idea también gastar pues mucho dinero en hacerse este tipo de procedimientos. Advertirles que no todo es como lo pintan. Obviamente tienen intereses de por medio, ya sea clínicas cosméticas o dermatológicas, o pues todas estas que vemos a veces en ciudades grandes que están por ahí. También existe un riesgo de que no sean 100% lo que están usando, y han habido varios casos de usar productos fraudulentos que llevan a aún más problemas, pero hasta los que sí son médicamente registrados y checados, y que las agujas que usan, etcétera, todo está muy controlado, puede llevar a problemas porque se están inyectando una toxina en la cara. Y ahora sí a lo que voy de los peligros pues que existen y de lo que estaba hablando. Por ejemplo, esta es una de estas imágenes de resonancia magnética donde se ve que ahí siguen metidos todos esos químicos que alguna vez se inyectó esta persona, por ejemplo, desde hace 6 meses. Salieron varios... quiero regresar ahí. Salieron varias imágenes donde se ve claramente que, por ejemplo, en los labios, en donde normalmente se inyectan, ahí sigue toda esa cosa que se meten, y que no les digan que se disuelve tan fácil. Se tienen que usar otros compuestos para también disolver lo que ya se inyectaron, pero al disolverse, pues obviamente la piel se estira a lo largo de los años y terminan viéndose como pues velas derretidas. cómo le pasó, por ejemplo, a Kylie Jenner, pero ahora en un caso más serio y quiero mostrar rápidamente nada más este video de YouTube sobre lo que puede pasar con usar pues Botox cosmético normal en una clínica normal. Esta pobre mujer, que además es de edad bastante joven, terminó básicamente completamente paralizada, sin poder moverse y teniendo que hacer muchísimo ejercicio y terapia física, y no se sabe bien por qué le pasó, pero pues obviamente tiene algo que ver con el hecho de que se está inyectando una toxina. Y les recomiendo, si no saben quién es, Stephanie Lange habla bastante sobre estos temas, le pueden poner ahí subtítulos, pero todo este video es muy interesante porque pues desmiente muchas de las cosas que la gente normalmente creía sobre el Botox y que no te hace nada malo, no tiene nada de malo, ya está muy comprobado que sí funciona y que nunca te va a pasar nada malo. Pues no es cierto. Y obviamente lo dicen por vender, para seguir vendiendo. Y en el caso de Claudia Sheinbaum, pues si se quiere inyectar cosas, por lo menos está en edad, pero si eres joven, si conoces a mujeres jóvenes, ya sean 20, 30, etcétera, pues también aprender a quererse y a querer tu cara y tu cuerpo como es, o mejorarla, pero de formas sanas y sin tener que recurrir a inyectarte toxinas por todos lados. Y las arrugas son normales, todo el mundo mueve la cara y todas las arrugas que tienes son porque has vivido una vida digna de tenerlas, pero también enfocarse tanto en la belleza y que todo eso se vuelva, hay personas que terminan en deuda por andar tratando de hacer todos esos tratamientos, no vale la pena y además son más riesgosos de lo que dicen porque obviamente lo que más quieren es vender. Y hasta ahí grabé. A ver cómo me va con esta noticia, porque creo que a mucha gente le interesa, o bueno, sí usan este tipo de procedimientos cosméticos. Walker dice, hola, buenas noches. Walker. Luis Medina Sánchez dice, hola de nuevo, apenas regresé a México trabajando y representando la buena ingeniería mexicana durante Semana Santa. Muchas gracias, los ingenieros son muy importantes. Walker dice, he visto eso, hay un tipo que tiene como 31 años de México que se llama Mike Máquina del Mal, que se pone Botox. No lo conozco, no tengo el gusto de conocerlo, pero voy a investigar. Y Walker dice, al menos Sheinbaum me hubiera mandado a su suplente y decir que estaba enferma. Exactamente, pero pues no nada más se puede soltar así de fácil y además pues con tanta noticia últimamente yo creo que tenía que aparecer, pero es lo que pasa con todos estos procedimientos, la gente cree que va a acabar viéndose de una forma y terminan pues básicamente arruinando sus caras. Maue dice, voy llegando y se escucha entrecortado el audio. Nat, sí, Guy me avisó y por eso tratamos de arreglarlo, a ver cómo sale. Walker dice, ahorita le digo que deberíamos de cambiar el aspecto cinemático. Una vez más, gracias por apoyarme con mi campaña de no usar ese ángulo, pero se cree cineasta. Botox del bienestar, exacto, Rafa, me dio muchísima risa. Y Maue dice, cree que solo era él y reinició YouTube y todo bien. Y sí, hemos estado teniendo por alguna razón a veces los lives, en especial en RUMBLE, a la plataforma donde nos vamos, donde sí nos dejan hablar de cosas que YouTube no nos deja. Nos han dicho que está bastante entrecortado, pero por ahora es pues como de las pocas soluciones que tenemos, porque las plataformas así son y tienen sus políticas de sus comunidades, de estándares de comunidad o community standards, no sé cómo les digan en español. Walker dice que en El Salvador cada inyección cuesta $150 americanos. Imagina pagar tanto y estar corriendo el riesgo y joderte la cara. Pues sí, exactamente. Y no digo que todos los procedimientos cosméticos no sean necesarios o que si lo quieren hacer, pues háganlo, pero que se haya vuelto tan normalizado y que ahora todo el mundo lo tiene que traer, en especial las jóvenes, como digo, que se ponen esta cosa que se dice el trend que se llama baby botox. Ahí es donde creo que está el problema de que se ha normalizado tanto, porque ahora todos creemos que siempre todos nos van a ver en pantalla y todo lo más importante es cómo nos vemos para otros y no tanto para nosotros mismos, etcétera. Ahora sí ya me voy con la sección en inglés, pero muchas gracias por andar por acá para la sección en español. Gracias a todos los que escribieron mensajes, comentarios, los leo todos, o bueno, todos los que puedo leer. Y no se les olvide darle like, suscribirse, etcétera. Y prometo que ahí viene el video editado. Va a ser de esta semana, va a ser sobre Canadá y por qué me fui y por fin hablar sobre eso en español y pues desmentir muchas de estas cosas que nos dicen y nos muestran sobre lo padre que es Canadá y cómo es un ejemplo y del sector de salud es increíble y todo es gratis. No es cierto. Pero ya lo diré más en mi sección, en el video editado.
Source. Just hit the super source. Okay. So, well, I need it like this for next week when we start cutting clips and things.
Okay.
So we're gonna.
Because Walker said I was gonna read you.
Yeah, but it's not for that. It's for specifically cutting clips next week. But you can read it to me.
Fine.
Let's hear what Walker
says, I think you should change, because he wrote it in English, so you would understand. Oh. He says, I think you should change the cinematic view to avoid the green monster getting angry because it doesn't know how to format it properly. And then he said, I'm just kidding, guy.
But
yes,
we're going through a lot of changes on the show. Hopefully next Monday you'll start seeing them. We're going to start doing different lengths of segments, things like that, so we can clip it for our English Nat and the Guy, which we currently have almost nothing on there.
Yes.
So if I can clip 5 segments from this show on there daily, I think it would really help. And that's kind of why I've been playing with the new camera angles.
Yes.
So if they're a bit annoying for the live, they should work well for our clips.
And for me.
But what did you go over with the Botox? What was that story?
Well, everybody got it's trending right now on X. Sometimes that's how I find out what people are talking about or what I should talk about. Claudia Sheinbaum came out looking super. Her face looked super bloated.
Oh.
And people were saying that's the wellness Botox because everything in Mexico is about bienestar, which means wellness.
Yep.
So every program they come up with or the supports for old people, etc. They call it wellness. So now it's the Botox wellness. And it is, kind of ridiculous that even AMLO, her predecessor, came out to say, all of these politicians spend millions on getting all their faces, put stuff in them, and they're wasting public funds. And now here the predecessor is doing the exact same thing and coming out on live public television because she has to do that every morning, looking ridiculous. And then I talked about the dangers and how people don't actually know how dangerous Botox is. It comes from the botulinum toxin.
Yeah.
It is a toxin, and botulism is what you get from that toxin. It basically paralyzes you, as I showed in the video also earlier.
Yeah.
And just how I think it's ridiculous that there's all these trends, and now 20-year-olds are getting Botox,
Yeah,
looking way older than they should. And just ruining their faces because that's what the internet is telling them to do, essentially. And I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I don't think any guy likes that
We
even.
were talking about that a little bit yesterday when it came to what's-her-name's face?
Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway,
But that's even going further. That's what the rich people can do, which is get millions of facelifts. But now they're secret facelifts, so they don't look as facelifty.
Oh, yeah. Did you have the Florida woman story or no? I didn't know if you got an article because I do have a clip.
No, I didn't have an article, so...
Okay. Well, before you switch, let's just talk about next week. We're going to change the time. We currently start at 9:15 every night. We're going to start the show at 8:45. You're going to do 15 minutes in Spanish. Then we're going to do 45 minutes on YouTube, probably 5 segments, and then we're going to end on the Green Monster with 3 or 4 segments over there. So next week we're going to start at 8:45 every night.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go into the 3-shot with. Yeah, perfect.
But I need your. There.
Yeah, that's good.
Sure.
So let's get the headphones.
So do you
on.
want to give context?
Yeah, let's give a little bit of context. So
because he mentioned it quickly just now when we started, but.
And usually I put a celebrity story up front, but this time this story was just too crazy. I had to say something about it. So a police arrested a Florida woman, Latrice Battle, after she allegedly impersonated an ICE officer in order to kidnap her ex-boyfriend's wife at her job place, which is absolutely crazy.
Yes. What women will do.
And ICE agents right now are just going across the United States. So if she isn't illegal, I've seen some of these arrests, it's not extremely official. Mm-hmm. They're kind of plainclosed officers, so it would be easy to impersonate them.
But it is illegal to do that. I'll just reiterate.
Okay, let me get my headphone right here.
Should I go back to it?
Yeah, back to my clip. Okay. It's a short clip, so.
Step
There you go.
out. Turn around, face the car. Lift the channel 1015.
1823 out. Fair one, copy.
And that's it. It was just the woman getting arrested,
But it was more about this story.
It was more about the story, but I just wanted to show context of who we were talking about,
Yes.
what she looked like, things like this.
But a lot of people are doing like all of these, playing these jokes or pranks, etc. on.
This wasn't no joke.
No, or being crazy about it, but dressing up as ICE agents. I mean, you can get this stuff on Amazon, which I mean, while it is important to, you know, what they're doing in the States and trying to, you know, weed out the people who shouldn't be there, it's also illegal to, and it's a crime to impersonate an officer, especially an ICE officer, and it's also ridiculous that people are thinking it's even funny to do that because it is affecting people that are getting arrested, and it's also creating a lot of like mass panic and chaos as well.
Yeah, definitely. So
Don't impersonate ICE officers.
I thought that was an extremely funny story, though, so I just had to put that as
Yes.
the headline.
I mean, what women will do. Why are women so crazy?
Oh, my God. Don't ask me.
I'm not crazy.
Okay, let's go into a little bit of culture story. This is Michael Bay and Sydney Sweeney team up.
So apparently Michael Bay found his new Megan Fox. Michael Bay and Sydney Sweeney team on movie adaptation of Outrun video game at Universal.
Yeah, and I think this is a good matchup. Sydney Sweeney is young and hot. Michael Bay knows how to direct young and hot. He did Transformers.
Yeah.
He discovered Megan Fox. Plus, he's really good at action movies. This is going to be a car action movie, so...
But I am interested with, Michael Bay's history and what Megan Fox especially has come out and said about him and the allegations that she has said about him and how she was mistreated on set. How Sydney Sweeney's feminism and empowerment is going to clash with what is known about Michael Bay. And they tried to get him in a lot of trouble during the Me Too era, didn't really stick. But at the same time, what are her super feminist fans going to say about this move that now she's working with a horrible misogynist pig?
Well, I think he's going to be on much better behavior, and I also think the culture is shifting, so she's not going to want to really say anything or ruffle
No, but
feathers.
the fans, we've yet to see what the fan reaction is because the fans are still very much in
and
that.
a lot of the fans for this, she did or was in talks to do Gundam. Remember we talked about that? And now she's in talks to do this video game movie. So she's picking movies with built-in fan bases, which is really good.
And male ones.
And
Because,
male
we
ones.
know the main interest of hers.
So she's going to garner these fans from anime. She's going to garner these fans from 80 video games, and they'll stick with her going on to other movies after this, most likely.
Yeah, this might actually make her into what we've seen has been continuously be lost, which is these actors that anybody will follow no matter what they're on, like these actual A-list actors that don't essentially exist anymore. I mean, this could propagate her since she's touching so many fandoms and fan bases. But I mean, we know why she's getting picked because she's
not only
nice to look out for men.
She's in a position where she's big enough. She kind of gets to pick her roles now, for the most part, and so she's smart enough to. She might be a feminist, or her fans might be, but she's picking highly sexualized roles.
Yeah.
Which is smart on her behalf, because eventually she's going to age out, but these fan bases will stick with her past her prime.
But I mean, is Outrun a very big game? I know nothing about video games.
In my generation, it would have been pretty huge. I don't know after my generation. It's a really old game. I don't know if they remade it for PlayStation and things like that later on, but you can see the graphics kind of there. I remember this game. There's not much of a storyline to it. You race cars, and there's a blonde chick in one of the cars.
They're doing the whole nostalgia thing as well. I mean, they're continuing on that trend because they saw it works. I mean, we saw Barbie. There's talks about
Zelda.
what was those things? Zelda, but
Mario, Sonic.
Yes, but those the things that guys used to play with that weren't Barbies. They were
G.I.
Joes. Also talks about being in a movies, making a movie about that after the success of Barbie.
Well, and I think it's less about the actual video game property here and more about Michael Bay knows how to direct action. They put a hot chick in it, and then you just add on that element.
And it is starting to seem maybe that movies are going to start going back to what they were back in the 90s, 2000s, you know, like just normal, what people actually want to watch. In this case, what older men want to watch.
I want to see good 80s movies when it was like hardcore action hero, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's hard to find a good action hero. There's none these days.
No, because they all look like skinny little bitches.
Or they're extremely...
Like, all the men are all Timothée Chalamet. Like, why do people think that he's hot? Why are they trying to make him into this hot star when he's not? He's a twig and he's not attractive. And, like, all of these upcoming, action men. I'm also thinking about, although I like him, but Tom...
Hardy.
No. Tom... Spider-Man. Little Spider-Man.
Oh, my God.
What's his name? I mean, he's funny and etc., but they're trying to make them into exactly what a Tom Hardy used to be or what a Tom Cruise used to be, and they just don't fit the role.
They're
feminized.
There is a ton of action heroes that aren't twigs. The problem is they're all aging out at the same time.
Yes, but now...
So we can talk about The Rock. We can talk about Tom Hardy. We can talk about Sylvester Stallone. Everybody that was in The Untouchables, which was like 10 different people.
All old.
They're all in their 60s and up.
Yeah.
Even if they're not in their 60s, the rest of them are in their 50s.
And
Tom
women
Cruise.
have been led to believe that they should find these twig-like, feminized, estrogen-laden men attractive, but they're not attractive. But I keep seeing like TikToks on X, because I'm not on TikTok, but like of these young kids that think they're hot but they're not. What we need to like manly men again, please.
Okay, well, let's go into manly men here with WrestleMania 41. And I'm not a big WrestleMania fan. I kind of brought this story up to talk more about the business side with UFC, WrestleMania, and Netflix. They have 114%. Their ratings are up for this WrestleMania. Why is that? Because they just signed the new contract with Netflix. So they have a subscriber base of 300 million. That's why they had so many viewers for this WrestleMania. And the UFC is currently renegotiating their contract. So this is a good indicator if they do sign with Netflix, which right now is the lead prospect for them to sign with, that their worldwide subscriber base would go way up, or their viewership would go way up. Did you have anything about WrestleMania? I didn't figure you'd have too much about the story, but I did put it in there just to mainly talk UFC. Also
talking about UFC, it is showing maybe a return to manlier things. Speaking of what we were just talking about, an increased interest in men watching things they're actually interested in, leaving a little bit behind the whole DEI wokeness of that entertainment has been for the past 20 years, and maybe the public now telling and showing that they are interested in things that they were interested in 20 years ago as well.
Well, as a kid, I used to be really involved in WWE, but as I got older, I lost my complete interest. I haven't watched it in decades. But I do have a few friends from Vancouver that are actually wrestlers in the amateur circle, and these amateur things they're throwing on YouTube and stuff are getting really high production values and things like this now. So if amateur wrestling's getting big, and then regular wrestling has a huge increase in viewership for this WrestleMania, it's a good sign for masculinity, even if I don't like wrestling. Yeah. So I do have to appreciate it.
Yeah, and we do have a story later about even, U.S. military going up now.
Oh, yeah.
And people are signing up.
To talk about the next story, I had to send you a couple photos so we could talk about that.
Okay. There. CBS settles discrimination lawsuit over alleged racial quotas for hiring TV writers. And, I mean, this has been something that CBS has been struggling with, but they're one of the wokest networks.
Do you have your AirDrop on?
No, I can't.
Oh, you can't?
No, because it messes up the stream.
Okay, that's
Send
fine.
them to yourself.
I can't see them on my screen.
Okay.
So, that's fine.
So the deal aligns with companies across Hollywood stepping back from DEI policies. Parent company Paramount Global is seeking regulatory approval of its proposed merger with Skydance. So they're trying to settle this one quickly. And essentially, a lot of these companies are trying to make people forget what they were actually doing and what policies were actually instituted within their institutions, but people aren't so quick to forget.
Well, yeah, and you have a lot of people, when they think DEI in Hollywood, they were thinking in front of camera because it was huge, but behind camera, they had
That's where the most effect was, I think.
Yeah, that's where they had the unreasonable quotas. In front of camera, people thought they were putting too many DEI hires, so it wasn't reflective of the population. But behind the camera,
it just looked forced.
Behind the camera, it was a 50% quota rate, which they were having trouble finding hires for that.
Yeah, and even, I mean, I made a whole video in Spanish about the Oscars and what you need to, like, how many boxes you need to tick to even try to apply to get an Oscar. These big movies, especially behind the scenes, all are essentially just hiring people for how they look or what race they are or what sexuality they say they have. But there's, again, the whole problem with DEI is there is no talent or merit being even considered when they're hiring, which is why a lot of things have gotten shittier over the years.
Well, also, I was going to say, there was another point I wanted to make on this. If you were wondering why these TV shows are no good, they're hiring based upon DEI rather than hiring the best writer for the job.
That's a huge problem with the writers as well.
And new writers, because they have a lack of talent, they say, I'll just try something new and hide behind the shield of virtue, which is diversity, equity, inclusion.
And again, a lot of them are coming out of universities, which we know have been completely captured. They're now trying to be uncaptured. Harvard is having a whole ass lawsuit against the Trump administration for telling them they can't be funded until they stop doing the madness. But a lot of them are coming out of universities with this whole ideological bend and ideology already instilled in them, and then they're propagating it everywhere else.
Yeah.
For the entire population. Yes.
So, but DEI is quickly getting rooted out of, DEI is quickly getting rooted out of not just the film industry, but all these industries. And we keep talking about it time and time and time again here. Yeah. But Trump has really gone in there and gutted all these institutions from DEI. All the government websites, DEI has been taken off of there. They're putting major pressure on companies that don't want to cooperate to get rid of their DEI. There's been a few lawsuits where they said DEI broke fundamental laws in the United States.
And the problem is not even that they were trying to be diverse, inclusive, etc. Is that that was the one thing they were focusing on, and they were actually almost breaking with people's constitutional rights of not being discriminated based upon race, etc.
The courts decided they did.
I know, but what I'm saying is that, like, if it was completely natural, merit-based, and they ended up hiring a lot of people of X or Y race, sexual orientation, etc., there'd be no issue. The issue is that they were purposefully, number one, discriminating against a certain type of people, and then just hiring another certain type of people, which was what they were trying to get rid of initially when they put it in the Constitution.
Okay, we can go to the next story then.
Let me see if we have comments. So Carlos Garcia says, 5 weeks ago. Okay. 5 weeks ago, I told you, looks like Trump's going to wreck the economy. You hit me with the old, let's wait and see, which you like to say a lot. Well, look at it now, straight up a damn mess, whole ass S show.
I don't think it's so. I don't think it's that bad yet. And I think if he is wrecking the U.S. economy, he's also wrecking the world economy at the same time. So the U.S. economy really isn't showing, and he is bringing a ton of investment money. I think you're going to see right around the 3-year mark whether this strategy was successful or not. Right now, I like the way he is retooling. There's a lot of good things happening. Yes, the stock market might be going down, but
it's going up and down.
A lot of other things are going very well. House prices are coming way down. There's less unemployment, things like this. So there is a lot of good things happening.
And also, I mean, of course, the immediate effects are going to be different from the effects long term. And I mean, we have to see, and in this case, wait to see what the long-term effect is, because at the beginning it was well known by everybody that the economy would suffer. But then it's about seeing if his crazy plan works and if other countries should follow suit or start thinking about seeing the same things he has seen within the U.S. and bringing back industry, etc., or if they should steer clear from it. But at least he's trying something new instead of giving the same old
In a
it doesn't work.
In a globalized market, American workers couldn't compete because the wages were too low. But in a nationalized economy, it should be good for Americans and the American workers. He's the American president, so he's put it Americans first. Now, if Pierre Poilievre wins in Canada, potentially he could take the same road and start putting Canadians first. In Hungary, the Hungarian president is putting Hungarians first. In the rest of the EU, though, we see this globalist mess, and the population is really coming last. Whether that's Ireland, the UK, France, I mean, I can go on, but a lot of these Western countries are putting their populations last. So yeah, he's restructuring the economy. There's going to be some tough times here for a little bit, but overall, I think Americans are going to be happy at the end of the day, but we will see.
And also, I mean, there's going to be tough times for people that are not in America, of course, but a lot of it has to do with how those individual countries have managed their own people, their own economies, etc. The reliance they've had upon the U.S., China, etc., manufacturing outside. I mean, we talk about it a lot. It's happening in Europe, where they're now realizing that they've essentially handed over anything, all their manufacturing, anything that they could bring back, they're still deciding to keep outside of their countries. They're selling their infrastructure to China, to the U.S., to other countries, and relying too much on other countries. So if other countries are suffering, I'm not sure if that's Trump's number one priority.
Also, it looks like the U.S. is preparing for war, not necessarily that they're going to go for war, but they're going to project strength through their actions and not just bluster. They're actually reformatting the whole economy to a military industrial economy. So if anybody is thinking about attacking or challenging their alliances, it's going to really make those enemies question or think twice about it. So this new nationalized economy is better for things like this. Mm-hmm. So, okay, what do we got next?
Speaking about nationalized monopoly, etc., Google could use AI to extend search monopoly. DOJ says as trial begins. We kind of touched a little bit upon this yesterday, but Google is right now, again, going through a whole monopoly trial against them.
Yeah, and I don't know. This was in the prosecution's opening kind of volley, and they were saying Google could use AI to extend their search monopoly. I don't even know if they have a search monopoly anymore. Maybe statistically they do, but a lot of things aren't counted in that. So a lot of people aren't counting Grok, ChatGPT. They're not counting YouTube.
Instagram.
YouTube is the second.
TikTok.
Yeah, YouTube is the second biggest search engine out there, but it's not counted as a search engine.
But that also is from Google.
Oh,
but like with TikTok, for example, it's the number 3 or 4. That one is also used as a search engine, which I don't think is a good idea, but I mean, Google's also completely biased on the search results.
That's what I was kind of getting into. Google's really fallen off, and when you try to search things just don't come up, especially when we're living in Canada.
Yes.
The government was able to leverage and put a lot of pressure on Google. So when you would search for things in Canada, nothing would come up. But if you search for the exact same thing in Mexico or outside of Canada, you can find all about different government scandals and things like this.
Yes, but even during the pandemic times,
the what?
The dark times, Google was manipulating search results and hiding on purpose actual information that was out there from verified doctors, etc. But because they wanted to continue with the World Health Organization narrative, they hid a lot of those results as well. So I'm not surprised that, they're trying to go at them now that new administration is up, but they were also trying to go at them during the last administration because they were trying to get rid of monopolies.
Yeah, and we've seen Facebook, Google, I believe there's a lawsuit against Apple as well. So the government is going after a lot of these companies for monopolistic practices and things like this right now, and really trying to break them up.
And for a while.
Well, these tech companies had a lot of power, and they were leveraging it onto government, especially on the Biden administration. We've seen this. Mm-hmm.
And the Canadian government.
Yeah.
Well, the Canadian government was, they were letting the Canadian government tell them what to do. Also with news. But that's a whole other issue. So next, you put this in there. So IMF, I'm sure you can talk about this more than I can. IMF cuts growth forecasts for most countries in wake of century-high U.S. tariffs.
Yeah, and I think this has less to do with the U.S. tariffs, and these economies were going to collapse anyway, and capitalism was really running into a barrier. Capitalism works as long as it grows like a pyramid scheme. Capitalism always has to keep growing because it's based upon the stock market. The stock market has to keep growing in order for stocks to go up. A lot of these companies are fully matured. A lot of these industries are fully matured. That's why we're seeing the birth of fake industries and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Cool, sorry. I was trying to see if we had comments. But what I was also going to say about this is that I don't know if they're taking now into consideration, because this is from today, the article is from today, but are they taking into consideration all of the deals in there? A lot of these countries are now trying to, settle with the states.
Well, this is what I was talking about too. They're not just talking about the U.S. economy. They're talking about all countries.
Yes.
And this is what I was saying when if Trump cripples all the countries at the same time, but the U.S. slightly goes up, it looks like their economy is doing very well.
Yes,
so if he wants to make this transition happen and work, he kind of does need to cripple the world economy at the same time he tries to fix the U.S. economy.
And again, what should Americans in this case be most concerned about? Their own country or everybody else's country? And what should those countries also be concerned about themselves? And why are they so reliant upon the U.S.?
Well, and that's going to go into the next clip we have in just a minute, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, we'll see what happens with this because I think he's got this planned transition with these tariffs, and it's really working out for him fairly well overall. And there's a lot of things outside of the tariffs he's able to accomplish either with the tariffs as a smokescreen or really attack countries under the radar. People don't really know that he's really going after the globalists and the EU right now, and he's trying to cripple their economy. And he needs to do that if he wants to focus on other things. Otherwise, the EU does have a lot of levers they can pull over the U.S.
Yes, so the International Monetary Fund on Tuesday slashed its growth forecast for the U.S., China, and most countries, citing the impact of U.S. tariffs now at a 100-year high, and warning that rising trade tensions would further slow growth. The IMF released an update on its World Economic Outlook, compiled in just 10 days after the U.S. President Donald Trump announced universal tariffs on nearly all trading partners and higher rates, currently suspended on many countries. It cut its forecast for global growth by 0.5 percentage point to 2.8 for 2025, and by 0.3 percentage points to 3% from its January forecast. That growth would reach 3.3 in both years. Yeah, but at the same time, this is a lot of fear-mongering still.
They keep talking about growth. And in a capitalistic society, yes, growth is measured in GDP, so all these countries are constantly on this hamster wheel chasing it. But the populations of these countries, they don't necessarily need more GDP and more growth in order to have a good life if the right...
well, it's also what kind of growth are they incentivizing, and what kind of growth are they... I know, but what is that growth in the end always going to be beneficial to the population of the country, especially when it's tied, in this case, to many other countries, so it becomes a domino effect. So the over-reliance on this global trade and global partnerships and moving factories, manufacturing, et cetera, outside of their own countries is now causing them to suffer for the decisions that
this is what I'm going to say.
Laws made a while ago.
The elites want a globalist economy because their GDP goes up on a global basis, but it's really bad for the citizens. In a nationalized economy, the GDP isn't going to go up nearly as fast or nearly as much, but it's much better for the citizens. So when you've seen the elites separate from the population, this was during this age of globalism, and we've really seen what happened to the citizens of all these Western countries.
I keep getting reminded of that clip we showed a few days ago, last week, of this Chinese guy that was essentially saying the exact same thing Trump was saying.
Yeah.
But coming from a different source, it's interesting, saying you let all of these industries leave, and now you're blaming us, in this case China, for all the repercussions that are happening, but it's actually like your own fault and your own elite's fault, which is basically what Trump is trying to do, bring it back in order to, not rely. The problem is the over-reliance on others as opposed to your own economy.
Yeah, and the thing is,
Like they're all too much. They're too tied together right now.
the path China's going on
And we
right
saw
now,
during
they
the-
want to keep things globalized. America wants to start nationalizing and polarizing in a multipolar world. So it's going to be interesting what happens here.
Yes, especially the relationships that those countries have with other countries.
Yeah. Okay.
We had some comments. Someone replied to you, so and I think it has to do with this as well. Let's wait 3 years. Maybe by then the dollar will be toilet paper, the stock market a ghost town, and we'll all be paying $50 for a damn sandwich. But hey, let's wait and see. Real solid plan, bro. And then Rafa said, keep dreaming.
Well, I don't think I would be less concerned about the U.S. dollar, the Mexico and the Canadian dollar, and much more concerned about the EU dollar. The EU
The euro.
is teetering on the verge of collapse.
Yes.
And
That is their own fault.
And that's why they want to really get this war going in Ukraine so they can bring in their digital currency, which is already ready legislatively. And they want to be able to freeze their stock market so people can't get their assets out of the EU. Because right now, all the assets, all the gold, everything is fleeing EU markets, and it's absolutely crippling them. Most of their manufacturing base has already left. So the EU, the only way to save it is through a war, nothing else. So I would be very concerned for EU citizens right now, but we'll see what happens.
You said it again. And I mean, the whole let's see what happens is, I mean, right now, of course, there's going to be some sort of impact and effect of all of these things happening kind of all at once, especially because Trump has been waiting, 40 years to implement this plan, even back when the Democrats thought it was a great idea as well. And that's why he was preaching it all the way back in 1982 or 1981 in an interview with Oprah. We've talked about this before. But of course, there's going to be some sort of impact because it's destabilizing everything. But is that a bad thing or a good thing? And for that, we do have to kind of wait and see, because things don't just magically will get better or magically get worse. I mean, things are going to start moving either in the right or the wrong direction, but at least they're moving in a direction.
Well, and
instead of the stalling that has been happening for who knows how long.
Globalists were planning on monopolizing the world economy. There was a leaked tape from Mark Carney today talking about global carbon taxes and different levers the globalists were planning to manipulate the global economy on. Mark Carney still hopes to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is globalism is crumbling under the weight of Trump. So it may be a good thing, even though it looks like it's bad for the world economy. What the world economy was headed for under the globalists was complete authoritarianism. Yes. They were gonna cut out countries that wouldn't uphold the carbon tax and things like this.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, in the end, end up hurting the citizens a lot more than anything else. Hold on. He replied. Okay. Carlos Garcia still says, look, I ain't trying to preach or pick sides. I lean conservative too, just not blind to what's happening. Tariffs hitting hard, markets shaky, dollar taking a hit. We don't need 3 years to spot the trouble brewing. This ain't about being woke or not. It's about calling things for what they are and no filters. And again, I mean, I'm not saying that there's no impact or that it's not going to be negative. But in the end, if this can decouple countries from relying on other countries for everything, essentially, as we saw during the dark times, it's not good that everything was being manufactured, for example, in China, or almost everything, because countries were suffering from, I mean, just regular stuff that they needed to use.
Yeah, and I'll say you have to remember where we were when Biden was in office and what would have happened if he got another term. We were looking at a digital currency. The EU is looking at a digital currency. The EU literally has already approved all the legislation and has the framework for the currency ready to go. Canada also has the legislation passed and ready to go. There was enough pushback in the United States where a lot of the legislation is there, but it's not ready to go yet. And Trump is trying to save the dollar. Now, I'm much more for a dollar and gold and things like this, because if a digital currency comes in, man, that's going to mean massive control for the government. These are programmable digital currencies where they're going to be able to tell you what to buy, when to buy it, and the government will deposit money in your account, but you'll have to spend that money by a certain time.
Yeah, it's a great idea when you just say that there's going to be like universal basic income, essentially, but if it's tied to money that the government has essentially complete control over and also is not a gold-backed currency, as, I mean, right now most of them are, it is worrying that it's essentially the government saying, okay, have this, but at the same time I can take it away or control in which ways you use it. Of course, this is all speculation and hasn't happened yet, but there is plans out there and they've outlined it, specifically in several documents, including from the World Economic Forum.
And the UN. And
Yes.
the Canadian government and the EU government and different EU legislative bodies. So
There's a very old video
the
on this
fact
channel.
that the economy is on rough waters right now, he's doing a lot in a world economy to disrupt the plans that were supposed to come, that were supposed to get a lot of control over the general population. The EU was consolidating farmland and farms into government, under government control and things like this.
Yes.
And a lot of this
farmland in the States is mostly owned by Bill Gates in China right
a lot
now.
of this had to do with the digital currency as well.
And the destabilization of banks, as I was saying. There's a very old video in this channel where I actually talked about this and the danger of CBDCs coming when all the banking collapses were happening, 2-3 years ago, during the right after the dark times.
So I definitely have an eye on Europe right now. I think they're too far gone, and they wanted that digital currency. They're managed by globalists and multiple layers of government from the EU to each country has their own governing body. So they're all in on this digital currency, and they have brought their society to the point of collapse because they wanted to force the digital currency in. So if this war does kick off, I expect to see that digital currency, and I expect to see a lot of authoritarian control over their people.
I'll just quickly read the reply, just to bookend it. He said, true, it ain't magic, but bad policy hits fast, and right now we're already feeling the burn. It's not about size, it's just facts. I get it, it's frustrating, but moving it all back to the U.S. isn't as simply as just saying it. Of course not. Costs would spike, jobs wouldn't magically appear, and people would still be complaining. It's not just about where stuff's made, it's about the bigger picture.
Yeah, well, I just want to see countries start putting their citizenry first. And in this global economy, they were putting their citizens last. And yeah, America is the one kind of controlling this. So a lot of the manufacturing is going back to America. We already see the...
And it's going to take a long time as well.
We already see the investment, but these other countries need to start nationalize their economy, need to be able to manufacture their own foods and different things like that for their citizenry and put their citizens first.
And not nationalizing in terms of the government owns it. No, just bringing it back to the country and bringing back manufacturing or whatever they used to do before.
And bringing democracy
Like, stop
back.
relying on other countries for your own stuff.
And bringing democracy back, because right now they keep canceling election after election after election in the EU. Sometimes they'll run the election. They don't like the winner, like in Romania. So then they cancel that election and they say, oh, you can't run again in the next election.
And we have to right now wait and see what happens in the Canadian one at the end of this week, because
And then in Ireland,
things are going to get iffy there.
And then in Ireland, they just canceled they don't even want to let Conor McGregor run for mayor, which isn't even president.
Yes.
So it's crazy. Okay.
Yours?
Yeah, let's go into...
Do you have it?
Yeah, this is a Canadian politician from the Green Party, but this is just how
Elizabeth May.
Liberals and Green Party politicians in Canada think.
We spend more where Trump spends less. We spend more where Pierre Poilievre wants to cut. We spend more for the CBC. We spend more for overseas development assistance.
The CBC is the Canadian News
Broadcasting
Network. It's a
Company.
propaganda wing of the government.
Because now that Donald Trump has killed the U.S. AID program, and Pierre Poilievre thinks there are savings to be had in taking programs that help educate women and girls, fight malaria around the world, fight HIV/AIDS. That's where Pierre Poilievre thinks we've got to cut. Any place Trump is cutting, Canadians, pull together. We got to step up. The U.S. used to be the cop of the world. Now it's the bully of the world. We've got to do more than protect.
She wants to start taxing Canadian people even more. The Canadian economy is on the verge of collapse, and Canadian people feel the hurt more than almost any other country
They
right now.
have collapsed already.
They are taxed to the
I was
tits.
paying 27.3% in tax.
That's nothing.
year.
Some people pay up to 70% tax in Canada.
The richer you, the more money you have. But just in general, I mean, if you're trying to live,
Yeah.
It's impossible to do.
How are you
so.
going to take more than 50%? I don't even, like, it's craziness. This lady and a lot of politicians in Canada have this socialized mentality where just tax the people more. We'll just take more from them. And they want, she's talking about USAID, like they're helping people around the world. They were overthrowing governments with this money. They were creating coups with this money. This has already been revealed, but the propaganda wing in Canada is so strong. Canadians don't know this. So she can say things like this and people just don't call her on her bullshit.
Ourselves, we've got to step up for all the countries on earth that are in Donald Trump's crosshairs. For the poorest of the poor that he is targeting, we have to do more for international development assistance.
Canada needs to fix their own country
Yes.
before it collapses. The fact that this girl says she's going to help every country in the world is would guarantee that Canada would collapse. And thank God she's not actually in power right now.
That's why we needed to bring in financial transaction taxes, wealth taxes, increase corporate tax rates, and ensure that the government of Canada has more public money while each individual Canadian has more personal money. It's doable, but you've got to really think outside the box.
Well, Pierre
Her
Poilievre,
box doesn't work.
Pierre Poilievre had already solved this. He came out with his financial plan today, and it plans to balance the budget within a couple of years. And the way he was going to do that is Canada has more natural resources than any other country except for Russia. And they're going to utilize that. And over the last decade, the government has banned the utilization of most of their resources through handicapping them through legislation. So Pierre Poilievre is going to
Mostly
open that
to do
up.
with environmental protections, which make no sense.
Okay. Do we have any more stories for YouTube or no? Two more.
Yes, yeah, two more. But I mean, just on Elizabeth May, quickly, that is the way a lot of Canadians have kind of been led to think, and propaganda is to think that, oh, you are responsible for the entirety of the world, and you paying more to the government is going to liberate you and make you a better person. Like, the way Canadians have been told to think is that they're the nice ones, the good ones, the saviors of the world, that their healthcare being free, which is not, it's paid through taxes that are insane, and it doesn't even work. They're still trying to manage to say, oh, we are the best, we are perfect, we're better than the US. And now they're trying to put it even harder because the US is coming out as the bully, but it's a bully in a good way.
If Canada wouldn't have given all their or a large portion of their tax revenue to globalist causes and actually spent it within Canada, these tariffs that Trump is now threatening wouldn't matter because they would have had a nationalized, multi-level infrastructure within the country. Right now, they don't. Their entire economy is based upon the U.S.
Yes.
Okay.
And upon themselves, basically.
So the next one I have on my... Oh, but you have a story here, but I have the statistics here as well. So why don't you read a little bit about the story? And
this is from rand.org, navigating a changing military recruitment environment. Apparently, military recruitment for all branches of the U.S. military, Navy, etc., has been going up very recently.
Okay, yeah, so this is the U.S. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Space Force are all finding surges since Trump has gotten into office. And a lot of this is intentional by Donald Trump. He reversed the vaccine policy. He said anybody that was kicked out of the military because of their vaccine, they can now come back and we'll back pay them for all that time lost. They're completely changing the recruitment strategies, but this is from November 2024 to January 2025. So in 2024, the Army had 11,000 new recruits. This year they have 23,000. The Navy has 6,000 last year. Now they have 16,000. The Marines had 1,400 last year. Now they have 5,800, almost 6,000. The Air Force went from 4,500 to 14,000 recruits. And I can't quite see the Space Force on this one.
Space Force. But this goes back into what we were saying yesterday, essentially. We also showed a clip yesterday about a British person. I believe he was probably trying to be recruited by the British Army. How a lot of the armies around the world right now are lacking people because the people themselves, the citizens that they're now asking to step up and go fight and go risk their lives for their wars are no longer willing to do so because they've seen how their government actually works and what their government actually wants to use them for. And I'm thinking specifically of Canada. I mean, while we were there, we kept saying, like, if Canada eventually wants to get more involved, for example, in the Ukraine war or any other war, it's going to be hard-pressed to find any military-aged men that are Canadian that want to enlist because of how they were treated throughout the whole dark times.
Yeah, you are seeing this surge of nationalism in Canada, and it's actually kind of working a little bit. If Pierre Poilievre does get in office, I could see a nationalization and a surge in military enlistment and things like this, especially because Poilievre has a complete plan to reform the military, get these transgendered people out of it, stop paying for sex changes, crazy things like this. But the EU, I don't see their population, even if they push nationalized propaganda and things like this on them. I don't know if it's going to work.
No, and they're coming
we'll
out.
see.
I mean, right now when they're starting, or at least started to talk about recruitment in the UK because they say they want to put boots on the ground, blah, blah, blah. As peacekeepers, a lot of people on social media, young people, are saying, hey, I'm not fighting for this country.
Well, they're talking about
this country completely.
They're talking about conscription in the EU and in the UK for peacekeepers.
Yes.
You don't conscript peacekeepers, first of all. Second of all, people can see right through this bullshit and they're not going to sign up.
Mm-hmm. And they're saying so.
Yeah, we showed that video yesterday.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think we have one more story here.
But you had a clip about this? Or no?
No, because it's on my phone again. I couldn't transfer it.
Okay. And now back to Canada.
Why don't you just type up on X, see if you can find it, and then you can throw it on your screen.
Okay, what am I looking for?
Polling stations are running out of ballots.
I mean, I don't have that, but I have. A lot of people are voting in advance, but apparently a lot of polling stations are running out of ballots. Which is
so they've been manipulating the election laws in Canada for the past 4 years, and a lot of people don't know what actually happened. So the rules to who can actually vote has been expanded. Who can't vote has been expanded to certain groups to really favor the Liberal parties, where polling stations are, how ballots are collected, all this stuff.
And also there's been verified, stories and CSIS, which is essentially like the CIA, FBI of Canada, has come out and said that the elections, past two elections, have been manipulated by the CCP as well, with evidence. I mean, they've come out and said it already.
And just so we're clear, when they are doing polling, they're finding that conservatives at an 85% rate are saying they're going to go out to the polls. Liberals are around 55%. So the fact that there is massive voter turnout, especially for early voting, this weighs good for the conservatives.
Hopefully, because, we saw what happened with early voting in the States, which is how they managed to move it around. But Canada is, quite different in how their elections work, but they're not unmanipulatable because we saw what happened. And even the basically own Canadian government came out to say, yeah, we investigated and we found that there was interference essentially from an external government.
And I'm not saying Pierre Poilievre is the best candidate, but he's the best choice between the two Canada kind of has. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're looking at. Even with Poilievre, he's not going to fix all the problems, and there could be an authoritarian streak in there. He's already made some promises that don't look good for the future of Canada, but he's still a much better choice compared to Mark Carney. Mark Carney will not only destroy Canada, he's going to help destroy the rest of the world.
Yes, because he is essentially the last remaining globalist out there that could come up to power in the next, soon.
He's the only one left.
But what I was going to say is that's the thing, is the competency part. Because Justin Trudeau was just essentially put there, and he was a puppet. Carney was one of the ones that was behind him, kind of manipulating everything. But now they're bringing him to the forefront. So
he's the only.
They're running scared.
He's the first competent globalist. The globalists have actually put it up front because the entire thing is collapsing. So they need somebody that's very competent and knowledgeable on the economy and things like this on a globalist level in order to try to save this venture. Because right now they have people like Macron, they had Trudeau, they have Keir Starmer. These are puppet government. These are puppets. Carney is not a puppet. He's a devious mastermind, one of the architects of this global movement that was happening with climate carbon tax and things like this.
Yeah, the carbon tax, a lot of the WEF plans, etc.
Okay, well, I think we're going to head over to the green monster. That's RUMBLE. Why don't you tell them in Spanish what it actually is? A lot of people asked and they didn't know.
RUMBL es una plataforma de videos parecida a YouTube, pero que nos deja hablar más libremente, digámoslo así, sobre historias más pesadas y de política, y donde sí podemos decir cosas, en vez de decir como los tiempos oscuros, podemos decir la pandemia, etc. Entonces, por eso nos vamos para allá durante el segmento más político.
Yeah, we had a lot of people asking in the comments, what were we talking about?
I don't know if they were saying it sarcastically or not.
Okay, well...
Because maybe they just want us to say it out loud, and they were saying like, oh, I don't know what that is. Why don't you say it out loud? But it's because YouTube doesn't like it.
I didn't know what that was for a long time either.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to head over there now, so you can follow us.
Yes. So I'm ending on YouTube. Give me 1 second. And